U.S. tariffs on China could hike up to unprecedented levels. President Trump angry at China's latest restrictions on rare earths and preparing countermeasures. We bring you his reaction and what's potentially on the table. The Israel Defense Forces complete a first phase pullout as a new ceasefire in Gaza takes effect. And Israel's Prime Minister comments on what he calls a great achievement. An explosion at a military munitions plant kills multiple people in Tennessee. Secondary blast forced rescuers to keep their distance from the site. A threatening letter was mailed 2,400 miles across the country to political commentator Benny Johnson, just days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced an arrest in the case. New York Attorney General Letitia James indicted on Thursday in a mortgage fraud case. What evidence do prosecutors need to prove their case?
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. President Trump reacted to China's announcement to restrict exports of rare earth materials, calling it trade hostility. In a post on Truth Social, the president said some very strange things are happening in China. They're becoming very hostile. He noted that the move is unprecedented and will clog the market and make life difficult for every country. Here's more on what the Chinese regime announced and how that impacts the United States.
China dramatically expanded its rare earths export controls on Thursday ahead of talks between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. The world's largest rare earths producer added 5 new elements to its list of restricted rare earth exports. Beijing also added dozens of pieces of refining technology to its control list, while announcing rules that will require compliance from foreign rare earth producers who use Chinese materials. The Ministry of Commerce also announced extra scrutiny for semiconductor users, saying defense users will not be granted licenses, while applications related to advanced semiconductors will be approved on a case-by-case basis. The slew of new restrictions follows calls by U.S. lawmakers earlier this week for broader bans on the export of chip-making equipment to China, and Beijing's regulations mimic rules the U.S. has implemented to restrict other countries' exports of semiconductor-related products to China. They also expand controls Beijing announced in April that caused shortages around the world before a series of deals with Europe and the U.S. eased the supply crunch. The new curbs will take effect on November 8th, just before a 90-day trade truce with Washington expires. Their announcement comes ahead of a scheduled face-to-face meeting between Trump and Xi in South Korea at the end of the month. Founder of Singapore-based Edge Research Tim Zhang said Thursday's move increases Beijing's leverage ahead of the meeting.
So back to President Trump's response. He noted that China's move is uncalled for and surprising. He wrote, quote, "I have always felt that they've been lying in wait, and now, as usual, I have been proven right. There is no way that China should be allowed to hold the world captive, but that seems to have been their plan for quite some time." The president noted that the U.S. has the ability to counter China's move, saying, quote, "The U.S. has monopoly positions also, much stronger and more far-reaching than China's. I have just chosen not to use them. There was never a reason for me to do so until now." Trump is also canceling his planned meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping, saying, quote, "I have not spoken to President Xi because there was no reason to do so. I was to meet President Xi in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea. But now there seems to be no reason to do so." The president emphasized that he is preparing a massive increase in tariffs on Chinese imports and also considering other measures. Trump wrote, quote, "I will be forced as President of the United States of America to financially counter their move. For every element that they have been able to monopolize, we have too. I never thought it would come to this, but perhaps, as with all things, the time has come. Ultimately, though potentially painful, it will be a very good thing in the end for the USA." And the market is reacting to Trump's announcement. The Dow Jones dropped by 600 points today, and the S&P 500 dipped the most since April. Trump is expected to finish his regular medical checkup after 3 p.m. He might talk to the media by then, so stay tuned and we'll keep you updated throughout the day. And as I said earlier, Trump is undergoing his routine medical checkup at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland today. This will be the president's second medical exam since taking office this year. Trump is currently 79 years old, making him the second oldest person to serve as president ever after President Biden. Trump said yesterday that he feels very good both physically and mentally, and he likes to check his health early. Trump's last medical examination was in April. Following that exam, the White House said the president was healthy and robust. Then in July, the White House disclosed that Trump had swelling in his lower legs and bruising on his right hand. His doctor said it was due to chronic venous insufficiency, a benign and common condition in people over 70. Since then, the White House has not released more details about the president's health. A ceasefire in Gaza took effect at 12 p.m. local time. Israel says its forces have completed the first phase of their pullout from parts of the territory. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today called the planned return of hostages from Gaza a great achievement.
Now we are gripping Hamas from all sides in preparation for the next stages of the plan, in which Hamas will be disarmed and Gaza will be demilitarized. If this is achieved the easy way, so be it. If not, it will be achieved the hard way. Hamas agreed to the deal only when it felt that the sword was on its neck, and it is still on its neck. I promised the families of the hostages, and I also promised you, citizens of Israel, that we will return everyone, without exception.
According to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, CENTCOM has confirmed that the Israel Defense Forces completed the first phase withdrawal to the Yellow Line. President Trump posted a map earlier this month that appears to show a yellow boundary outlining the so-called initial withdrawal line. The Israeli military also confirmed the latest move. Here's an IDF spokesman urging Gaza residents to avoid areas under its control.
At this time, our forces under the Southern Command have positioned themselves along the agreed deployment lines in accordance with the Yellow Line. These deployment lines allow for defense and forward operational control along the Gaza Strip. I call upon the residents of Gaza, avoid entering areas under IDF control, respect the agreement, and ensure your safety.
The Israeli military released footage today, it says, showed troops repositioning in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, thousands of displaced Palestinians started streaming back towards their abandoned homes today. A massive column of Gazans went north on the coastal road towards Gaza City. The enclave was under attack just days ago in one of Israel's biggest offensives of the war. The ceasefire marks the first phase of an agreement aimed at ending the conflict. The Israeli government approved the plan overnight. President Trump said he expects Israeli hostages to be released as early as Monday or Tuesday. Hamas is expected to release the 20 living Israeli hostages together. Trump also announced plans to travel to Egypt for a formal signing ceremony once the ceasefire terms are finalized. Here are more details about the U.S. brokered deal.
Israel's cabinet on Thursday signed off on a ceasefire agreement with the Hamas terrorist group, paving the way to release all hostages and halt fighting in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the agreement a national and moral victory, crediting President Trump and his team for their role in securing the deal.
We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims, and a central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal.
A government spokesperson said the ceasefire would take effect within 24 hours. Hamas will have 72 hours to release all hostages, meaning they will have to be released by Monday. In exchange, Israel will release more than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, including 250 serving life sentences. The Israeli military will withdraw to a new line, maintaining control of just over half the Gaza Strip. The deal comes after days of indirect negotiations in Egypt. Former White House advisor Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff both praised Netanyahu's handling of the talks.
Great job with the negotiations. You held your lines firm, and I think that between you and President Trump, you had a lot of alignment on what the end state should be.
The president believes that. My president believes it. He believes that Prime Minister Netanyahu made some very, very difficult calls, and lesser people would not have made those calls.
Earlier in the day, Kushner and Witkoff met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo.
I was sure that with your arrival, that you will reach an agreement that would make us happy and stop a war ongoing for 2 years.
Witkoff acknowledged the role Egypt and other countries, including Qatar, Turkey, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, played in bringing about the deal.
To watch it was really, to me, a great example of the world coming together.
Witkoff told Egypt's president that he will head to Israel with Kushner to discuss the implementation phase of the agreement. A senior member of Hamas on Thursday announced agreement to a permanent ceasefire.
Today, we are announcing that we have reached an agreement to end the war and aggression against our people and to implement a permanent ceasefire.
He said this would involve the withdrawal of Israeli forces, the entry of aid into Gaza, the opening of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt, and the exchange of prisoners. Celebrations swept across Israel and Gaza as news of the deal spread. The walls of Jerusalem's Old City and the Israeli Parliament building were lit in red, white, and blue in honor of the U.S. role in brokering the peace and President Trump's expected visit. An Israeli farmer plowed his field with the words, "Nobel for Trump," a reference to the Nobel Peace Prize after the president's efforts pushed both sides to an agreement. As part of the implementation phase, the U.S. will deploy around 200 troops to Israel to help monitor the peace deal and coordinate aid, but none are expected to enter Gaza. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in a social media post that the U.S. personnel will be tasked with monitoring the Gaza agreement in Israel and will work with other international forces on the ground. Leavitt clarified that the troops were not being newly deployed, but reassigned from United States Central Command already in the Middle East. And Trump told reporters on Thursday that he would travel to the Middle East on Sunday, hoping to be present when Hamas releases the last 20 living hostages.
Israel and Hamas have agreed to the initial phase of a peace plan. Joining us to discuss is Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Executive Vice President for the Coalition for Jewish Values and Advisory Board member of the U.S. Religious Liberty Commission. So, Rabbi, good to see you again. Can we get your emotions that you're feeling right now amid everything, including that there's an agreement to have the hostages returned?
You know, it's very, very good. You see, there is cheering, there is dancing throughout Israel. You know, after years of being told how Israel was seeking genocide, the Israelis are just delighted to have peace, delighted to have an end to this horrible conflict, and of course the release of the hostages. It is bittersweet as always because you're dealing with an explicitly genocidal terror organization. The goal of Hamas is no different than the final solution proposed by the Germans. And the fact that Israel, as part of this deal, has to let go, on behalf of innocent hostages, they have to release hundreds of murderers, hundreds of people with actual blood on their hands from killing Jews, just like the hostages, simply for being Jews. That makes it bittersweet. But obviously, the overall feeling is one of relief and delight that this should finally be coming to an end. And, you know, a gratitude to President Trump and this administration for making that possible.
You know, Rabbi, a number of guests that I've speak to over the past week are saying they feel a sense of cautious optimism because, after all, this is Hamas that we are dealing with. So can we get how you feel? How optimistic are you about this peace agreement actually lasting?
My one real concern was that I now understand that what it says in the agreement is that those released terrorists will actually be allowed to go back into Gaza. My initial understanding was that they would be expelled. They'd be able to find a home somewhere. The Arab world is a huge place. And sadly, there are a huge number of those people indoctrinated to hate Jews and want to kill Jews. But if they're in Algeria, they don't pose a huge threat because Algeria has already ethnically cleansed out all the Jews who used to live there. The same is true of Iraq. There are places that these people could be sent where they could no longer pose a threat. Gaza is literally on the doorstep. It is a place, by the way, where for centuries Jews used to live. This idea that it was always Arab territory is part of the anti-Semitic mythology that has always surrounded the conflict. But The idea that these people should be able to move back there and be on the doorstep, that's what keeps the optimism at most cautious, because I don't know how much we are simply kicking the can down the road.
All right, Rabbi, let me ask you this. And as you know, the plan sees Gaza being governed by Palestinian technocrats and then eventually transferring control to the Palestinian Authority. What do you think about this?
You know, it's interesting. I believe it's the government of the Philippines, where the foreign minister just announced, well, we'll be happy to recognize a Palestinian state as soon as we can be presented with a Palestinian government devoted to coexistence and peace. You currently have, or had, at least before the war, you had two governments of so-called Palestinians who are just Arabs, because like the rest of the Middle East, and one of them was paying the families of terrorists generous stipends to reward the families whose children go out to commit terrorism, and the other was an explicitly genocidal terror organization. Neither one of those qualifies. And that's really the biggest problem here. This idea that we're going to have a Palestinian government that's actually able to maintain control before literally a generation. Think about the denazification of Germany. These people are going to need literally decades to unlearn hatred of Jews as their reason for existence. They literally have schools named after arch terrorists based not on their scholarly contributions to the betterment of humanity, but the number of Jews that they killed. And that's a problem that's going to persist long beyond the end and peace treaty that follows this.
Is it possible to have Hamas have no role or any influence in Gaza governance?
Well, that's supposed to be Trump's condition. So we're going to see what really happens to that. It is a problem when, you know, right now, if you look at the Gaza Strip there, first of all, there is no peace movement. There's nobody. There's no leadership anywhere, not in Palestinian Authority territory, in Judea and Samaria, not in Gaza, where they're actually advocating for peace and coexistence. What you have is the people who are not supporting Hamas are not supporting Hamas because they kept this going for too long and their own houses got destroyed. But otherwise, they were supporting Hamas. And if they weren't supporting Hamas, they were supporting Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Progressive Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or any of the other terror organizations that used to function in the Gaza Strip. What's going to be seen down the road? They need an entirely new form of not only of government, but of the community's allegiance. And that's going to take, like I said, decades to develop.
Okay, Rabbi, I'm wondering here as well, what is the feeling right now among Jewish communities towards what's happening towards the Israeli government?
Well, you know, it's really not about the Israeli government. It's amazing to watch, you know, like I am very critical about the Israeli government about a lot of things. One of them was not seeking the release of hostages. One of them was not wanting to eradicate the Hamas threat to Jewish lives. I mean, that's just crazy talk. Obviously, people were using the Israeli government as a flimsy way to claim that they don't hate Jews while they're seeking the genocide of Jews. It's just, you know, Hamas continuing to function is seeking genocide. To claim it's somehow evil to want to eliminate Hamas, as people have argued to me, you know, directly, that's advocating for genocide, because Hamas was explicit that if given the opportunity, they would go out and do it again. What we're watching right now is Israel's security reputation has developed, and it's making new friends. I mean, this is one of the things that Trump wants to do here. He considers the Abraham Accords one of his signature accomplishments. He wants to see Arab nations welcoming trade and interaction with Israel at the very same time that the Europeans have come on board with demonizing Israel. It's really it's a return, a very sad return of Europe to a millennia of hate towards Jews that just found a new facade in the state of Israel.
Okay, Rabbi, if I may, I would just like to ask you one more question. What impact would an end to the fighting in Gaza have on incidents of anti-Semitism in the U.S. and worldwide?
You know, that's really anybody's guess. The excuse is gone. I mean, it was always an obvious excuse. They were going around chanting about how Israel is committing genocide. There's never been a case in history where the people you needed to drag to the peace table were the people claiming to be the victims of genocide. It just doesn't work that way. This whole thing was nonsense. I mean, obviously, these are the same people who claim that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza for the last 20 years, while the population grew exponentially. After October 7th, they immediately pointed out that over half of Gaza's population was under 18 because the population was growing so much. So, you know, that was anything but a genocide. It was never honest. It was never serious. So now the question is, okay, the fighting is over. Your excuse is gone, guys. They are still marching today, by the way. I mean, look at it. Right now, there are marches and demonstrations against Israel in favor of Palestine when the conflict is supposedly over. What's that all about? Well, the answer is it never was about anything other than hate.
Well, Rabbi, you know, we always enjoy having you on the show. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for these opportunities.
An explosion at a military munitions plant kills multiple people in Tennessee. Secondary blast forced rescuers to keep their distance from the site. Stay tuned for that story after this break.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality. A timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural, organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure, natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com. A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Mariella.
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
An explosion at a Tennessee military munitions plant today killed multiple people. Residents in the area reported hearing and feeling the blast miles away. The blast occurred at Accurate Energetic Systems. The company manufactures and tests explosives at a facility near Bucksnort, a town about 60 miles southwest of Nashville. Humphreys County Sheriff Chris Davis said at a news conference that several people were unaccounted for. A home security camera in the area captured the sound of a loud explosion about a 20-minute drive from the scene. Residents said they felt their homes shake. Some captured the loud boom of the explosion on their home cameras. The cause of the blast was not immediately known. Democrats and Republicans are still at odds on passing a continuing resolution to fund the government. House Republicans passed a bill last month, but Senate Republicans need enough Democrat votes to break a filibuster. Here's what Senate Majority Leader John Thune had to say as the government shutdown entered its 10th day, actually.
It's really time for the Senate Democrats to show a little courage and put the American people ahead of their far left activist base. They have a simple choice in front of them. Open up the government, quit playing politics, quit talking about how it gets better for us because we're looking at the polling and we think that we're winning.
Thune said he had 55 votes to pass the bill, 5 short of the 60 votes required to override a filibuster. The majority leader has called a vote more than half a dozen times to pass the House's bill. However, Democrats are refusing to reopen the government as they demand health care funds for insurance subsidies set to expire. As the government shutdown drags on, senators late last night overwhelmingly approved the annual defense policy bill. While it doesn't directly fund the Department of War, it allows contracts to continue. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
On a vote of 77 to 20, senators approved next year's National Defense Authorization Act. It authorizes the War Department and Department of Energy to spend $924 billion in 2026. That top line is higher than the $893 billion approved by the House. Now the two chambers will need to work out differences before it can be signed by the president. A key measure ends authorization for use of military force in Iraq.
Now, that's been in place for 23 years, and the Iraq War ended in 2011. So when you have this authorization for use of military force, sometimes presidents use it for other types of actions.
It also includes support for Ukraine, authorizing another $500 million and requiring the United States to provide intelligence support to Ukraine. The bill includes a pay raise for service members and the purchase of new ships and aircraft.
We fought for important assets at Whiteman Air Force Base. The B-21's coming, and then also got secured the F-47 that's going to be built in St. Louis, and there's money in there for that. So a big win that makes America safer and Missouri safer too.
The bipartisan consensus on the floor comes at a time when the two parties cannot agree on a simple bill to fund the government. Senators have left town for the week and won't be back until Tuesday, ensuring the government shutdown continues for the next 4 days. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Air traffic controllers who miss work during the government shutdown will be fired. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told Fox Business the overwhelming majority of workers were still showing up, but those who won't will be let go. Here's Duffy.
We need more controllers, but we need the best and the brightest, the dedicated controllers. And if we have some on our staff that aren't dedicated like we need, we're going to let them go. Again, I can't have people not showing up for work.
Duffy said he has seen a noticeable rise in air traffic controllers calling in sick amid the ongoing shutdown. The Transportation Secretary said that in the past, an average of 5% of flight delays were due to controller staffing shortages. Duffy said now 53% of delays can be attributed to being short-staffed. About 13,000 air traffic controllers have not been furloughed during the shutdown. Roughly 50,000 TSA agents are required to continue working airport security checkpoints during the shutdown. The next paycheck for these workers is due on October 14th. The federal government is allocating over $4 billion toward the southern border wall. The plan is to add over 200 miles of barrier along the border with Mexico. In total, the government awarded 10 construction contracts. This will add hundreds of miles to a so-called smart wall border security system. It includes steel barriers, waterborne barriers, patrol roads, cameras, and more. Customs and Border Protection says the smart wall will give agents more support on the ground. New York Attorney General Letitia James was indicted Thursday in a mortgage fraud case. What evidence do prosecutors need to prove their case? That and more after this break.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had zero chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is.
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you. Kids in the middle. What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
President Trump is canceling a planned meeting with CCP leader Xi Jinping, and he's threatening to hike tariffs on China. That's after China put much stronger export controls on its rare earths. To break this down, we're joined live by NTD's Washington correspondent, Jack Bradley. Jack, good afternoon. What is the president saying?
Good afternoon, Don. Well, President Trump has some harsh words today against the CCP, saying that they're holding the world captive with new export controls. Now, this is a major shift in tone from the president on China. He's canceling a planned meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Both were expected to meet later this month in South Korea during the APEC summit. Now, the tensions come because the CCP announced last night that new export controls on their own rare earth elements and other key materials. Now, if you know, rare earths are used to make electronics from things like iPhones to missile defense systems. Very important key materials here. Now, here's President Trump this morning on Truth Social writing, quote, "Some very strange things are happening in China. They're becoming very hostile and sending letters to countries throughout the world that they want to impose export controls on each and every element of production having to do with rare earths and virtually anything else that they can think of, even if it's not manufactured in China." Now, Trump said that China was holding the world captive by building a monopoly over key materials like magnets, which are used to buy rare earths and other elements, and that this latest action would clog markets. He said world leaders have been contacting him in outrage over this move by the CCP. And now Trump says that there's no reason to meet with Xi Jinping anymore, calling these actions by the CCP, quote, sinister, hostile, and inappropriate. Inappropriate because China announced these new export controls on the same day that it was announced that Israel and Hamas agreed to a peace deal. Trump vowed to take countermeasures, and he went on to say on Truth Social, quote, one of the policies that we're calculating at this moment is a massive increase of tariffs on Chinese products coming in to the United States of America. Now, he added that the U.S. has even more and stronger monopoly positions than China and has avoided using them until now. Don?
Okay, Jack, thank you very much. New York Attorney General Letitia James was indicted Thursday in a mortgage fraud case. Joining us to discuss is Jesse Benall, partner at Benall Law Group and former attorney to President Donald Trump. So Jesse, good to have you here. Can you talk to us from a legal standpoint, what exactly constitutes bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution, and how serious are these charges?
Yeah, thank you for having me. That's a great question. These are very serious charges. It has to do with lying to a bank in order to get a better loan, and something that the bank then relies upon when it actually then decides to give you that loan for a home. And so one of the things that banks do is they know that if someone's going to be living in a piece of property that they buy, they're going to be more likely to want to make all the payments. They're going to be less likely to default, because then if they do default, their house is going to be foreclosed upon, and they're going to be out on the street. Whereas if it's an investment property, something that you're going to rent to someone else, then it's going to be more likely that if you get in financially strapped, that you're going to choose to default on that loan. So the end result is you always get a better rate if you are going to live in the house that you're going to purchase. And so what we're looking at in this case is Letitia James, by all appearances in the indictment, signed a document saying that she was going to live in this house that was being bought for, I think, $137,000 in Norfolk, Virginia, when in reality, this was, in effect, an investment property for her. Certainly, the Attorney General of the state of New York is not going to move into a $137,000 house hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. And so that's the basis of the fraud.
Okay, so Jesse, how do judges generally look at intent in white-collar cases like mortgage or bank fraud?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I suspect that the defense that Letitia James may very want to use in this case is just that, it's intent. Because usually in a fraud case, you have to prove that someone willfully made that lie, decide that they willfully lied to regulators and that they knew that it was illegal to do so. And for a lot of people, they might be able to just say, oh, I just signed a bunch of documents that were in front of me and I didn't really pay attention. So this wasn't not an intentional lie. The problem here with Letitia James is that she's going to be hoisted by her own petard. At the time that she made this disclosure, she was in the middle of the most famous mortgage fraud, quote unquote mortgage fraud investigation of all time, the investigation into President Trump. Now, that was not actually mortgage fraud. We know in that case, there was no actual fraud. What she did appears to be actual fraud. And so for her to say that she didn't know her legal obligations here and that it was an honest mistake when she was in the middle of leading the biggest mortgage fraud investigation in history is going to fall flat. I think it's going to show that she intentionally signed these forms in such a way to deceive and any reasonable jury, and that's a big if, in very blue Virginia, whether they will get a fair jury. But if there's a fair jury, they will find beyond any doubt at all that she engaged in fraud, I believe.
Okay, so Jesse, I'm not very legally affluent here, and maybe you can speak to this for those who are in the same boat, our viewers. Is occupancy misrepresentation on mortgage documents considered serious enough for federal prosecution?
It is. That's something that, as I explained, it is very material because, and go back and look at the financial crisis. we see what happens when banks overextend themselves in their lending and don't lend to people that are good risks. That can cause mass defaults in such a way that it actually causes banks to collapse. So having an honest representation from lenders, from borrowers, from people that are getting a mortgage as to what they're going to use their home for is extremely important in making sure that banks are properly leveraged and that they are using the correct interest rates, that they are managing their risk correctly. And when you have a case where someone says that they're going to live in it and they really have no intention to live in it, and we know that she never had any intention to live in this home because she was the Attorney General of New York. She cannot live in Virginia and continue to be the Attorney General of New York. And I don't think anyone thought she was about to resign her position of the Attorney General of New York to go live in a $137,000 house in Norfolk, Virginia. And so for all those reasons, I think this is very material, and this is the type of misrepresentation that is prosecuted. And I've been part of major federal prosecutions over dollar amounts that are roughly about the same size as this.
Okay, so you bring up a point that she's the New York AG, and I'd just like to follow up on that. Why would this case then be brought in the Eastern District of Virginia when Letitia James lives and works in New York?
That's a great question. There's, I think, two major reasons why the venue is correctly put in the Eastern District of Virginia. And one is that the subject property at issue is in Norfolk, which is in the Eastern District of Virginia. And the second is the bank that the representations were made to was a Virginia Beach bank, also in the Eastern District of Virginia. So, just like you might be a resident of Virginia and you might be driving through New York, and you might rear end somebody when you're going through New York. You can't just say, well, I'm a Virginian, so you have to sue me in Virginia. In that case, the act occurred in New York, so you're subject to New York's jurisdiction. In very much the same way, and there's a difference, of course, between civil and criminal for what I just described, but it's effectively the same thing. When you engage in an act in Virginia, at this point, the act was sending in the relevant mortgage documents to the Virginia bank, and it was about a Virginia property. You're subject to jurisdiction and venue in Virginia.
Okay, so Jesse, can we get your views on this, your response that Letitia James accuses the president of weaponizing the justice system for political retribution?
Well, that's awfully rich coming from her, isn't it? She's someone who campaigned on going after a political rival in order to try to prosecute him and really destroy him. And there was no crime. There was no offense when it came to Donald Trump and his company and his family that she decided to attack for purely political reasons, using a very liberal judicial system in order to do so. And for her to then try to claim that this is a very simple, it's an open and shut case. It's not based on some concept of law that hasn't been tested in 200 years. It's about very simple, direct, provable fraud. Just shows her as the height of hypocrisy for her to say that. And I'll tell you, the best example of what she's going to be looking at right now as a problem is the best witness against Letitia James is going to be Letitia James, because she was tweeting all the time that, for instance, no one is above the law. She probably tweeted that half a dozen times during her time as Attorney General, usually about Donald Trump. She also tweeted and explained exactly why mortgage fraud was such an important offense, and has this great tweet about how it actually affects, when you make these misrepresentation, it affects average everyday Americans. And so there can't be a different rule for the powerful and another rule for the powerless. And so I think her own statements here are going to be used to show that she's guilty of this offense.
All right, Jesse, let me just ask you one more thing here. If James were convicted, what are the immediate legal and political consequences? Is she going to be removed from her position?
Well, if she is convicted of a crime of fraud, then one would suspect that the New York bar would immediately take disciplinary action and would suspend her. That's certainly what they would do to a Republican in her situation. So if the New York bar is acting fairly and justly, then she will lose her bar card if she's convicted of these offenses. And quite frankly, the New York bar should already be engaged in its own investigation to see if she is engaged in fraud that would cause them to suspend or revoke her bar card. And then also, of course, if she's convicted of a federal offense, I think it is very likely that she would end up having to resign or face impeachment for her position as Attorney General of New York. And certainly she can't serve in that position if she's imprisoned. And for these offenses, prison is certainly a possibility. The actual sentence is going to be something that's determined by a judge if there's a conviction in line with the sentencing guidelines, the federal sentencing guidelines. But if she's convicted of these offenses, then the federal sentencing guidelines will certainly have prison time as an option for the judge.
Well, all right, Jesse, good to see you again, and great comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to see you.
A threatening letter was mailed 2,400 miles across the country to political commentator Benny Johnson just days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Today, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced an arrest in the case. Stay tuned for that after this break.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked President Trump's plan to deploy Texas National Guard troops to Chicago. Judge April Perry ruled yesterday there was no credible evidence of a rebellion or danger of one in Illinois, rejecting the administration's justification for the deployment. A Justice Department attorney told the court that Chicago is facing a brazen new form of hostility from rioters targeting federal law enforcement. Perry questioned the credibility of claims about violence, saying they contradicted local law enforcement accounts. Illinois and Chicago sued the Trump administration, arguing that bringing in troops from another state violated Illinois' sovereignty and risked inflaming tensions. The ruling comes amid similar legal challenges to Trump's deployment of National Guard troops in Oregon. Amid ongoing protests, assaults, and threats of violence, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the department is hardening its ICE facilities and purchasing additional buildings. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more from Portland, Oregon, where protests have been going on since June.
Secretary Noem says that she's not backing down. She told President Trump during a cabinet meeting they are looking to purchase more buildings, particularly here in Portland and in the nearby area, as well as in Chicago, the two hotspots where a lot of these protests are taking place.
We're going to not back off. In fact, we're doubling down, because what they're trying to do with these riots and violence is distract us and keep us from going after those murderers and rapists that are out in the streets.
And as far as the National Guard, Pam Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi, did also mention that earlier about the National Guard being blocked in Illinois.
My lawyers are in court right now as we speak for you, arguing in Chicago and Portland to keep them safe, to bring in the Guard. The government doesn't want it there, but we do. We're going to keep their citizens safe, thanks to you.
The people want it. I don't understand the politics.
And very recently, the Homeland Security did share a video. They said that some of their agents were attacked in Illinois. They shared a video of a man running up to one of their vehicles and throwing a rock through the back windshield. They said that this man was arrested, and it's very likely we will see felony charges for him. They did post a video. We have that for you. Let's go ahead and play that. And Secretary Noem was here in Portland just on Tuesday. She did say she talked to the governor of Oregon. She talked to the mayor. She talked to the chief of police here and said that she will quadruple the amount of agents here if they don't, take these security measures in place that she is requesting for her officers. So I'll be here. Maybe we'll be hearing more about that in the near future here in Portland.
Mayor Paul Young of Memphis, Tennessee, said National Guard troops will begin patrolling today. Young said federal agencies have been operating there for about a week and that his team has been coordinating with them. The National Guard have been sent to 3 U.S. states and the District of Columbia. A judge temporarily stopped the troop deployment in Chicago yesterday. In Tennessee, the governor approved the National Guard presence in Memphis. About 150 Guard members will work with federal, state, and local law enforcement. Meanwhile, a court is deciding if President Trump has the right to take control of 200 Oregon National Guard troops. Those troops were meant to be sent to Portland, where protests have continued outside an ICE building. A threatening letter mailed to conservative political commentator Benny Johnson and his family in Florida was traced back to California. Today, Attorney General Pam Bondi made an arrest announcement alongside Johnson.
I don't want political violence. I want peace in my nation. I love this country. I want to be able to debate like Charlie did. I want to be able to raise my family in peace. That is our birthright. But you cannot make peace with evil as a Christian. You cannot unite with people who want you dead.
The author of this letter made it very clear that he hated Benny because of his views, and he wanted Benny dead. This was a coward hiding behind a keyboard who thought he could get away with this.
Bondi said a letter arrived at Johnson's home in Tampa just days after conservative thought leader Charlie Kirk was assassinated. She said the writer made it clear that he hated Johnson because of his views and wanted him dead. In a coordinated effort with the post office, the FBI, and state and local law enforcement, the letter was traced back to San Diego. Fingerprints pointed to George Isbell as the author. He was arrested and charged with mailing threatening communications. Thousands filled the Chester Fritz Auditorium at the University of North Dakota last night for a Turning Point USA event honoring conservative leader Charlie Kirk, 1 month after his assassination at a Utah campus stop. Political commentator Glenn Beck took the stage, revealing he had planned for Kirk to one day succeed him as a national radio host. Beck urged the audience to carry on Kirk's mission of faith, freedom, and open debate, and spoke about the power of hard work and forgiveness. Security was tight with federal and local officers on site. Many attendees said they came to celebrate Kirk's legacy and defend free speech on college campuses. The event was part of Turning Point USA's American Comeback Tour, which continues next week in Oklahoma City. The 2025 Nobel Peace Prize goes to Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. The Nobel Committee announced the award in Oslo this morning. Here is the committee chair.
She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy.
Machado went into hiding following last year's election in Venezuela. There had been calls for President Trump to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Earlier this week, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, a group formed after October 7th, submitted an appeal to the committee in support of Trump. But the deadline was January 31st, so he can only be considered for next year's Peace Prize. Machado posted on X today, quote, "I dedicate this prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Trump for his decisive support of our cause." After coaching badminton for 65 years, a veteran coach is showing the national England team he's not ready to hang up his jacket just yet. Colin Bedford says he's trained thousands of young players and he's truly amazed by the standard of play he sees now. At the age of 88, Bedford has probably spent more of his time on court than anywhere else. In his hometown, locals have even named the sports hall after him. But he's still very modest when he meets the badminton stars of today. Here's Bedford.
To be honest, I think it's a bit overwhelming, really. I'm only just along down the road, if you like, a little coach, and to meet the national coach, I'm amazed the standard of the players who are here today.
He's obviously inspired like plenty of kids to pick up a racket and play badminton, so it's nice that we could obviously meet him. Even have a rally with Colin is amazing to see.
Bedford started playing when he was 11 and he has never stopped, even when he was a soldier in the Malayan jungle. He says badminton kept him going when he lost his wife. When asked about his retirement, Bedford said he plans to keep going and is ready for whatever comes next. A new deal is expected to lower drug costs in the U.S. President Trump is set to reveal a new agreement today with drug maker AstraZeneca. Stay with us for that after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you will also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.